Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Jason Sari. I'm a financial advisor with the Premier Client Group. On the side, I run this YouTube page and a Facebook group called Financial Education for Retirement, just to help foster financial education in anybody I can reach. But let's get into the video today on how to save for retirement as a teen. Now, you may be thinking, why in the world do I need to start saving so early for retirement as a teen? Now, again, you really don't need to, but the power of compounding interest is a real thing. I'll show you guys some examples later on, but the earlier you start saving, the more you're going to thank yourself later. There's no reason you can't be putting away $100 a month, $50 a month while you're living with your parents, while you don't have a lot of responsibilities, and while you don't have a lot of debts. But it's just something to keep in mind that will make you so happy later on in life if you start saving early. Let's talk about what types of accounts you are going to be using to save for retirement. Other than a savings account or a check-ins account, just in your normal bank account, you can look into brokerage accounts, IRAs, and then 401k, 403b, TSAs. They're kind of all wrapped together, those 401k, 403b, TSAs. But those are the three main types of accounts that you will be using to save for retirement at pretty much any age, but they're the easiest ones to get started going as a teen. Just to start, IRAs, they are extremely important retirement accounts. Some say they are the best retirement account you could possibly have. Now, an IRA is an individual retirement account. They have a Roth and a traditional version. A Roth is something that where the money is put in post-tax. That means when you take the money out at retirement, that money is completely tax-free. While a traditional IRA, you put the money in pre-tax. You get a tax deduction, and then the money you take out at retirement is taxed at your ordinary income bracket. Now, as far as IRAs go, they are set up by yourself, hence the name individual retirement accounts. Completely by yourself, no employer, nothing like that. You have to set an IRA up as an individual. Now, with IRAs, you can trade completely tax-free as well. So with a brokerage account, if you sell a stock for a $100,000 gain, depending on a short-term capital gain or a long-term capital gain, you have to pay tax. But in IRAs, you can trade a stock a million times in 1 year, make $1 million of gains, and not have a single tax bill come to you whatsoever. Now, with this, there are certain restrictions, as you can't take the money out before 59 and a half, and again, a couple other ones, just like you have to have earned income to contribute. You have to have earned income to contribute to any type of IRA, Roth or traditional. That means it can't be money that you get from your parents as a gift. It can't be not that you're taking Social Security when you're a kid, but when you're older, you can't contribute to an IRA if you're just taking Social Security or a pension. It has to be income from a job. Another limit for these types of accounts is contribution limits. For a brokerage account, which I'll talk about next, you can put as much money in as humanly possible, and there's no limits. Nobody can control how much money you can put in. But for an IRA, the IRS only allows you to put in $7,000 a year if you're under the age of 50. After that, you can put in an extra catch up $1,000 for $8,000 a year. However, there's another stipulation that says you can put in the lesser of 100% of your earned income or that $7,000 limit. So if you make $3,000 in 1 year, you can't put in $7,000. You can only put in the $3,000 of income that you earned. Now, the last thing with IRAs for a while, just to go back on that difference between the Roth and the traditional IRA. A Roth IRA, you put the money in after you are taxed. So when you're a kid in a very low income bracket, again, a kid, a young worker, a young adult, whatever it may be, if you're not making a lot of money right now, if you're making less money right now than you will be at retirement when you're taking the money out of the retirement account, a Roth is probably the better option for you. Now, you might ask, how in the world would I make more in retirement than I would right now? Well, with retirement, you might have a pension, you might have other sources of income such as RMDs and Social Security. So you can't discount the fact that in retirement you might be making more money than you are now, even though you are currently working. So that Roth option definitely is something to look into. This isn't financial advice. Definitely talk to somebody who knows your full financial situation before opening one of these accounts. But again, typically for a kid, for a young adult, for a low income worker, the Roth option for an IRA is going to be the better choice. A little more info on the differences between IRAs. I have another video too that I'll attach to the end of this video because there are a couple other differences between a Roth and a traditional. But let's get into the next type of account, which is a brokerage account. So a brokerage account, like an IRA, you set up completely by yourself. A company is not going to do this for you. Other than that, though, it is not a retirement account, so you cannot trade tax-free. When you sell a stock in a brokerage account for a gain, then you have to pay tax, whether it be short-term capital gains tax or long-term capital gains tax. If you sell a stock at a gain in a brokerage account, you have to pay tax. Now, it's not great that you have to get taxed when you sell stocks in these types of accounts, but they do have some benefits. Just like a brokerage account does not have a contribution limit. So if you are to contribute $1 million a year, there's nobody telling you you can't. With an IRA, you can only contribute 7,000 a year. So if you want to put $10,000 away, you can't do that all in an IRA. That's why you have a brokerage. You have a supplemental account where you can put money into and save for retirement. But again, even though it's not a quote unquote retirement account that you're going to be able to trade tax free in, they do have their benefits. Another benefit being that you do not need to have earned income to contribute to one of these accounts. So if your parents give you a birthday present, give you $500 for your birthday, you have nothing to spend it on. You can't put that into an IRA if you don't have earned income, but you can put it into a brokerage even if you do not have a job, even if you don't have earned income for your whole entire life. You can still put that money into a brokerage account. Now, one cool thing about getting taxed in a brokerage account is you can also take losses. So if you sell a stock at a loss and it's a short-term capital loss, meaning you held the stock for less than a year and then you sold, you can take that loss against ordinary income for the year up to $3,000. So you can deduct $3,000 of short-term capital losses from your traditional income. However, in an IRA or a retirement account where you trade tax-free, you can't accomplish that. Moving on to another retirement account, however, is the 401k. Now, a 401k is very similar to a 403b or a TSP if you work in a government job like a teacher or in the military. But these types of accounts are set up by your employers. You can't set one up by yourself if you wanted to. An employer can match them as well, meaning that if you contribute a certain percent, they might match that percent completely on their own, which is another very cool thing that doesn't really happen with brokerage accounts or IRAs. Now, these accounts also have higher limits, meaning that since it's a retirement account, it's still going to have a limit, but this limit is $23,500 instead of that $7,000 limit. So you can contribute substantially more to a 401k than you can to an IRA. Now, like an IRA, however, these both have Roth and traditional versions. So definitely keep that in mind, what I was talking about before, based on pre-tax and post-tax, what makes more sense for your financial situation. But again, these 401ks are great. They can contribute more. They're set up by your employer. You can get a match, and they both have the Roth and traditional version. Now, very few jobs that you will work as a teen probably will have a 401k attached to them, but it's always a good thing to ask about, and it's always a good thing to contribute to if you have the opportunity. So now let's get into the cool stuff, the compounding interest, how cool the concept of compounding interest is. So let's say you start putting away $100 a month for 50 years. Now, 50 years might seem like a lot, but if you're 15 and you want to retire at 65, that 50 years is going to fly right by. So let's say you put $100 a month away for 50 years in an S&P 500 ETF, and then you get 7% on that money when you invest it. At retirement at 50 years, you will have $547,173. That's an enormous number for just putting away $100 a month. Without that 7%, the money you put in for $100 a month over those 50 years would only be worth $60,000. But because you invested it, it's worth almost 10 times that. Just to amplify this, try out 10%. So the S&P 500 averages 7 to 10% over the past 20 years. I think 9.5 is the actual number of what the S&P 500 has averaged. So let's say you put the same $100 a month away for 50 years. Instead, you get 10% on that money. You now have 1.7, almost $1.8 million at retirement. Again, that's $60,000 you would have if you didn't invest it, but now you have almost 1.8 million because you consistently invested that $100 a month and got that 10% return. Now, hopefully this blew your guys' mind a little bit. How much just saving $100 a month can do for you in the future should be mind-boggling. That $60,000, what would have been if you just put it in a savings account in a bank or a checking account in a bank, can be $1.8 million almost if you just do the right things. Taking advantage when you're young and you don't have debt, when you're living with your parents, when you're just going to school. It's so important because later on, when you really do need that money, you will thank yourself 10 times over just for saving that $100 a month, little by little, putting it to whatever fund it might be, just investing consistently. Now, there is some stuff to worry about as a kid as far as making sure that your debts are handled, making sure if you have a car payment or if you have a mortgage payment, school payment, whatever it might be. If you're a successful teen, if you're working, if you don't have a lot of support from your parents. But as a borderline safety net, it's always nice to have around 6 months of fixed and variable expenses saved up. You always do want that safety net. You never really want to overextend yourself too much. Now, as far as these brokerage accounts go, as far as these IRAs and 401ks go, these are not great accounts to have your safety net in because if you need the money in a down year, that $1.8 million number I gave you, if you take money out of one of those accounts in a year where the market is getting crushed, that number is going to look drastically different. So again, if you want these 6 months of fixed and variable expenses saved up, put it in a savings account or a check-ins account in a bank. Don't do something crazy and just put it in an ETF or Bitcoin or whatever it might be. Have money that's safe so you don't overextend yourself and you don't get into a bad situation with that. Otherwise, though, guys, I know this was a lot of information. Please, this is not financial advice by any means. Someone really has to understand your situation to actually give you concrete financial advice. Speak to a professional. And again, if you guys want any more questions answered, I know that was a lot to go over. Please check out the Facebook group Financial Education for Retirement. There's financial planners in that group that are willing to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, guys, I hope you subscribe and like the video, but have a great rest of your day.